Thank you for joining me today. My name is Crawford, and I'm the Reference and Adult Services Librarian at the Ponte Vedra Beach Branch Library. 2021 is an incredibly exciting year for St. Johns County. In July of 2021, St. Johns County will celebrate its 200th anniversary. As such, the St. Johns County Library System is developing special virtual and in-person programming throughout 2021 to celebrate this momentous event. For today's program, since I generally review books and give you ideas of new things to read and explore at your library, I had to put my thinking cap on and think to myself, what are some of the things that attract both citizens and tourists alike to St. Augustine and St. Johns County? Well, obviously you've got the beaches. The beaches are beautiful. However, Florida has lots of beaches. So what makes St. Johns County, and in many ways St. Augustine, particularly special? Well, in the instance of St. Augustine, it's the nation's oldest city. And that's something to say because America's still a pretty young country compared to the countries in Europe, for example. So being the nation's oldest city means that we have a lot of really great history that's engaging both for people who live here year-round as well as people who visit. And right now with the pandemic, it's a little bit harder sometimes to take the tours and go to the places that you want to go to in downtown St. Augustine and still be safe. The same is true for the other thing that I thought of when I think of St. Augustine, and interestingly enough, St. Johns County as well, which is our ghosts. We're known for several haunted places here in St. Johns County. On Anastasia Island, we have the beautiful lighthouse, which has shown up on ghost hunters before. And there's all sorts of spooky spots in St. Augustine. They even have spooky tours that you can take. You can take midnight walking tours. You can take pub tours where you go into different pubs and have something to drink and then learn about all the different ghosts. There's Ghosts and Gravestones, which drives the big purple and black bus through St. Augustine. And again, some of these things are a little bit more limited to us right now. But what's not limited to us is reading. Reading is wide open. And sometimes, as you'll find in these books, you learn things that you didn't know before that maybe just exploring on your own, you wouldn't find out all by yourself. For example, that those ghost stories that we think of with St. Augustine and ghost stories like peanut butter and jelly, that we have ghost stories all across St. Johns County, local ghost stories, which are really interesting. And as far as the history goes, where we've shown up in history is not always just where we expect. Sometimes we know the big spots where we show up, but did you, for instance, know that Martin Luther King Jr. was in St. Augustine in 1964 for the Civil Rights Movement? So I learned all sorts of things by researching this program, and since it's a two-parter, I thought I'd start off the first part of the program with St. Augustine and St. Johns County history books. And this is just a sampling of what we have. There's way more out there, but I thought I'd pick a few titles that particularly grabbed me and introduce them to you. And then in part two, you'll see that we're going to dive into some of our ghost stories, which is always a lot of fun and not just a Halloween. And we've got several local ghost books, and again, not just for St. Augustine, but for other parts of St. Johns County. So if you don't live in St. Augustine, you live in Ponte Vedra, for example, where my library is, or you live, on Anastasia Island or anything like that, this program is going to relate to those areas as well as just St. Augustine itself. So if you've got a St. Johns County Library card, you can check out any of these books that you'd like. You can go ahead and jot down the titles during this presentation, or at the very end of this presentation, there'll be a slide that lists all of the books that I cover in part one, and at the end of part two, a list of all the books I cover in part two. So you don't have to feel like you have to scribble everything down while I'm talking about it. You'll have a list at the very end. And then you can come and check out some of these fantastic books. So let's go ahead and dive in. All right, so the first book we had, I figured I had to start where I am. And this is Images of America, Ponte Vedra Beach. So Ponte Vedra Beach has a really interesting history. It's not just an offset of Jacksonville Beach. It has its own history, its own culture. And if you live in the Ponte Vedra Beach area, or you vacation to Ponte Vedra Beach, or if you really haven't been up in this end of the county that much, there's a lot of really interesting information to read about in here. This particular book, and the reason I chose it, is written by Maggie Fitzroy. And Maggie Fitzroy, throughout my library career, particularly at Ponte Vedra Beach, which spans from October 2009 until now, so almost 12 years. She was someone who wrote for the Shorelines paper, and then I want to say she wrote for the Ponte Vedra Recorder. She wrote for another local paper. And so I've seen Maggie over the years covering library events. And I remember when she published this book, and I thought that is so neat that you took the time and the research to research this particular area of St. Johns County so people can know more than just, maybe what things they've learned on the surface. So it's really interesting way to kind of deep dive into a community, some of which the people who live here very rarely cross over the bridge to the mainland. They stay right here in Ponte Vedra Beach. Not everybody does, but a lot of people do. And much like Anastasia Island, where my parents live, it's a very close-knit community. And it's one of the reasons I love working at the Ponte Vedra Beach Branch Library, because it really feels like very much like a neighborhood library. We see a lot of the same patrons and the same faces, and that's always fun and engaging. So this is a book about Ponte Vedra Beach that you can check out from the library. And the next one we have, I just mentioned Anastasia Island, is Anastasia Island, St. Augustine's Jewel by the Sea. Now, I'm a little bit biased. My parents live in Anastasia Island. As a kid, I vacationed to Anastasia Island every single year to stay at our beach condo in Crescent Beach, which we just sold in the last year. And oh, that was so hard because I have so many wonderful memories at the beach. Because I was born and raised in Atlanta, Georgia, and actually lived in Atlanta proper for 6 or 7 years of my life. And then we moved out to a little suburb called Norcross. Those of you who are from Gwinnett County, you know what I'm talking about. And every year we came down to Anastasia Island, and it never occurred to me that someday I would live right here in St. Johns County, the very county that I was a tourist and vacation to every year. So this is a wonderful book talking about a very special island, much like Ponte Vedra Beach, a very close-knit community. There are people on that island who do not, as they say, cross the ditch. They don't go over the bridge to downtown St. Augustine. They don't go over the 206 bridge to the south part of St. Augustine. They love having everything that they have right there on the island. And I helped open the Anastasia Island Branch Library. And I can't tell you how popular it was, and even more popular today, for that very reason, that the residents right there on the island and people who come from North and South St. Augustine, who cross over the bridges, absolutely love that library. They love that they have all their own things there. So this is a really interesting book, learning more about a very specific part of St. Johns County, which would appeal not only to the residents who live in Anastasia Island, people like I was who visited Anastasia Island as a tourist, or people who are just a little bit more curious about what the island's all about. And this is a way to find out more. So just so you know, it's not all about St. Augustine. St. Augustine does appear in a lot of our books because it's the bigger community. But since we're a Florida library, we're a St. Johns County library, we're very interested in local history, and what an incredible year, the 200th anniversary, to celebrate that history. So the next book is St. Augustine and St. Johns County, A Historical Guide. And if you can see close enough, you probably recognize this street, good old St. George Street. I spent many a hot summer walking up and down St. George Street, probably sweating to death because there wasn't nearly enough air conditioning in any of those little shops to cool me off. But it's an experience. I feel like you really haven't fully embraced St. Augustine until you've been on St. George Street. It's incredible in the morning, in the afternoon, and in the evening. But I like that this historical guide also talks about St. Johns County, because as wonderful as St. Augustine is, there's so much more to St. Johns County than just St. Augustine. There's all the surrounding communities and cities and areas that are there to explore. So this is a great way to not only get the history of St. Augustine, but also the history of our county. And since, we're celebrating our 200th anniversary, what better time to deep dive into the history that, that touches us all, and maybe in ways that we don't even know. There could be things that we could explore and find out more about. We just need to know that they're there. And how things have evolved. For example, the Lightner Museum. I remember the first time I ever went to the Lightner Museum, and we ate in the Lightner restaurant, my mother and I think one of my mother's friends. And while we're sitting there at lunch, she points out to me, "Did you know this used to be a pool?" I was like, "What do you mean it used to be a pool?" And this was around the time I was performing with the St. Augustine Community Orchestra. And I said, "You mean when they clear out this restaurant and I perform right here in the St. Augustine Community Orchestra on my clarinet, I'm sitting in the middle of a pool?" Yes, you can go in the Lightner Museum. You can see the pictures, all of that space where the restaurant is, where the orchestra performs, all used to be filled up with water, and it was a pool. And now it's an incredibly beautiful museum that had the Downton Abbey exhibit. So that was a new tidbit of information that I didn't know. And so there's all sorts of things, such as the things in this book, that may make you kind of re-energize your interest in the place that you live. You may think, well, I've lived here for 20, 30 years. I know all there is to know about St. Johns County, but maybe you don't. And so this is a really good book to check out. This was a donation to us a few years ago to our library. And I'm happy to say that I might have had a hand in helping get this donation for the library. I was really excited about it. This is St. Augustine, America's First City, a story of unbroken history and enduring spirit. If that doesn't encapsulate St. Augustine and St. Johns County, I don't know what does. Unbroken history and enduring spirit. And it's a beautiful book. It's almost like a big coffee table book. It has lots of really interesting information, beautiful pictures, just a really wonderful way to immerse yourself in everything. And again, find out things about perhaps your hometown, or even the place that you've been visiting many summers of your life that you had no idea about. There's so much to absorb. There's so much to take in. St. Augustine not only has a long history, it has a long military history. So if military history is something you're interested in, St. Augustine, St. Johns County has it. If you're interested in culture, we've got that too. If you're interested in all the different kinds of people who have lived here, we have that as well. There's just so much to deep dive into, and this is a beautiful, beautiful book to check out and find out more. Let's see, we've got Wicked St. Augustine. That's right, that's right. We do have a lot of history. We do have a lot of military background. We were a flashpoint for the civil rights movement. We have a lot of culture, wonderful food, a lot of different people who come together from all sorts of places all over the country and all over the world, who come and retire here or decide to live the beach life and soak up the history. And yes, I'm going to say St. Augustine has had its wicked moments too. There are some pretty crazy things that have happened in St. Augustine, and they are in this book. That's one of the things I love about St. Augustine. Does it have a lot of history? Yes. Does it have a lot of culture? Yes. But it also has some really eyebrow-raising moments that really make it a quirky little place to live. And I love that about it. It's not nearly as straightforward as everybody thinks. And any city that's been around for a long time, and of course, St. Augustine's been around longer than any other here in America, it's gonna have some local color, if you will. So if you're interested in local color, you're interested in knowing some of the other sides of things that have gone on here in St. Augustine, Wicked St. Augustine is your ticket. It's part of a Wicked series. They've focused on different cities and areas all over the country, and I was delighted to find out that they decided to highlight St. Augustine. That's one of the reasons that the tours downtown are so amusing is because they throw in these anecdotes that you wouldn't expect. We're not necessarily Charleston, and we're not necessarily even Savannah. We are St. Augustine, and we have a deep and enduring and also fun background. So speaking of the Civil Rights Movement, this is a fantastic book about Martin Luther King Jr. and the Civil Rights Movement, and when he came here in 1964, and it's called If It Takes All Summer, Martin Luther King, the KKK, and States' Rights in St. Augustine, 1964. Now, I am very excited to share that this will be part of the Book Lovers Book Club selections for 2021. And the Book Lovers Book Club is my book club here at the Ponte Vedra Beach Branch Library that I run with Trin, who is also part of the Adult Services team here. And for this particular book, we are partnering with the Cultural Council here in St. Johns County. And as such, they are helping us buy copies of the books that we can give to the patrons to read for the book club. And I'm super stoked about that, because what a great way to celebrate the 200th anniversary, to read a book about St. Augustine, about its history, and then get to walk home with a free book. So I'm really excited about this one. I'm taking over If It Takes All Summer, which I believe will be in June. And then Trin is going to do, of course, Bloody Sunset in July, some of which you all have read, a true crime story, of course, about the infamous murder of Athaliah Lindsley, which is still unsolved to this day. Hard to believe that, but it's true. And here it is, Murder in St. Augustine. Now, I know I just mentioned Bloody Sunset, which is, of course, the book most people are familiar with, about Athaliah Lindsley and the rather grisly murder right there on her front steps here in St. Augustine. People know where the house is. People walk by the house. They just imagine how it must have all played out in a world before, fancy cameras or camera phones or videoing. I mean, that this happened in broad daylight on the front steps of a woman's house, and they still haven't solved the murder is mind-blowing. Murder in St. Augustine is the mysterious death of Athaliah Ponzel Lindsley. And so what it does is it adds more information from Bloody Sunset that had been discovered in the 17 years between the time that I think the two books were published. I want to say Bloody Sunset was published at the very end of the 90s. I may have that publication date a little bit off. But basically, we're saying almost 20 years later, if you're interested in this particular true crime, which happened in St. Augustine, you can find out more information in this book, Murder in St. Augustine. Oh, another wonderful book we got as a donation, Oldest City, The History of St. Augustine. So again, there's never enough books to learn about all the things that St. Augustine has to offer. The spellbinding, the wild, the wicked, and just the truly interesting, because of course the longer a city or a place has been in existence, the more twists and turns there are in its history, which is why we're celebrating the 200th anniversary. So even if you think you know all there is to know about the city or the community in which you dwell, I dare you to take out one of these books, and I think you're going to find out some things that maybe you didn't know, and it gives you an opportunity to view your own city or community with whole new eyes. So this is a beautiful new book that just got donated to our library, Oldest City, and it really is an incredible book, and we're so glad that we got it as a donation. So now I'm back at Ponte Vedra Beach, and I just want to say thank you for joining me for the history portion of St. Augustine and St. Johns County. This is just a sampling of the books that we have to offer. We hope that you'll consider checking them out. Right after this presentation, there'll be a list of all the books that I talked about today. Don't forget to tune in for part 2, where I talk about our ghost lore. And if you think the ghosts are only contained in St. Augustine, think again, because we've got ghosts all over St. Johns County. And if you're interested in the paranormal or just like to be a little spooked, even when it's not Halloween, I hope you'll join me for part 2 and learn more about those books as well. And happy 200th anniversary, St. Johns County. I'll see you next time. Bye.